And so we meet again for the continuation of Sid Fleischman's The Whipping Boy. I am going to warn you, this is where my book has fallen apart, so if I'm struggling with pages, that is why. Chapter 8, The Ransom Note. Hold Your Nose Billy tilted the princely crown on his head. What have you writ down so far? Jemmy glanced up from the sheet of paper. To the king's most sacred majesty, dear papa. Aye, that sounds proper respectful. What else? Our captors are loyal subjects, but scoundrels by trade. Don't cross them. Make that a mite stronger, said the outlaw, beginning to pace. Tell him we're shameful mean and rough as a sackful of nails. Warn him we fear no gallows. Jemmy dipped the quill in beet juice and continued scribbling. I'll tell him you've got reserved seats in hell. Aye, that's the ticket. Cutwater began gnawing away at a roasted pheasant. His cheeks swelled out as if he had a monstrous toothache. What about the king's soldiers, Billy? Now the fog's lifted, they'll be following a lad like a trail of ants. Puts my spine a shiver. Faugh, exclaimed Hold Your Nose Billy. Even rabbits get muxed up and lost in this forest. We're well hid, Cutwater. I'll warn Papa, Jemmy offered generously, that if you spy out a single uniform, you'll crack my neck like a chicken's. Prince Brat sat sullenly on a pile of moldy bedstraw. He glared icily at the whipping boy who had seized his royal title. And don't forget the reward, Billy, said Cutwater. We want the prince's weight in gold bangers right. Tell the king that, directed Hold Your Nose Billy, in big letters. Now let me reckon out a safe spot to deliver the loot. Jemmy dipped the quill and then paused. Gah, he thought, it's not enough to choose my words as if I were a prince. Show some high and mighty, Jemmy. Think like a prince. Dimwits, he flared up, catchpenny rogues. I will not be exchanged for such a trifle. My mere weight? A paltry treasure you could carry on your shoulder? How dare you insult me? Hold Your Nose Billy's red eyebrows shot up in a bewildered surprise. Insult you? A trifle? A prince is worth a prince's ransom. The eyebrows lowered as quickly as they had risen. No offense meant, lad. How would you calculate a proper ransom? A wagon load of gold at the very least, and jewels mixed in. As I'm alive, a wagon load? Cutwater gulped down the wad of fowl in his mouth. We did forget about them jewels, Billy. A wagon load it is, then, exclaimed the hairy outlaw. Prince Brat's mouth fell wide open at the whipping boy's nervy mischief. Hold Your Nose Billy stood over Jemmy's shoulder and watched the words being scratched out. Finally, he said, Have you made your sign yet? About to, replied Jemmy. With as much flourish as he could manage, he wrote, Your obedient son, Prince Horace. Chapter 9, revealing Jemmy's plan to trick the villains. Hold Your Nose Billy popped a clove of garlic into his mouth and ground it between his yellow teeth. He helped himself to a veal pie. Nothing like garlic to clear the head and fend off the plague. Cutwater, give the lads a ration of breakfast. The scrawny outlaw sliced off 2 thick pieces of coarse bread. He draped a salt herring across each slice. Eat hearty, little fellows. This smelly stuff, Prince Brat glared at the bread and herring. It's not fit for flies. Why, we eat it regular, worms and all, said Cutwater, picking the bones off the pheasant. I'll starve first. Suit yourself, Cutwater snickered. This is the first time we've feasted off the king's own table, and there's hardly enough for me and Billy. Jemmy sat on the bed straw beside the prince and contemplated his breakfast. He examined the bread closely, hunting for varmints. The prince, he knew, had never been starved enough to pick out wildlife from his grub. Eat, he whispered. I can't find any crawly things in it. The bread's stale, grumbled the prince. Stale enough to patch a roof, but I've scoffed down worse. The prince began to nibble around the edges. Hold Your Nose Billy glanced over and grinned. Take a chaw of garlic, whipping boy. It'll improve the taste considerable. Cutwater wiped his thin, greasy lips with the back of his hand. Billy, how do you know the prince ain't laid a trap for us in that message? He could have said one thing or wrote another. Where'll we find someone to read it off to us? Jemmy lifted his chin to a regal height. You doubt the word and honor of your prince? Insolent oafs! Curs! I'll have you horsewhipped. Cutwater yanked Jemmy to his feet. Who you calling them names? I'll flog your hide pink as a salmon. Hold Your Nose Billy pushed him aside. Keep your wits. It's worse than common murder to lay hands on a prince. No need to break any more of the king's laws than we have to. If it comes to flogging, there's the whipping boy. The prince's eyes widened and his face blanched white. The prospect of taking a whipping himself had never occurred to him. But, sir, it wasn't me who called you names. Cutwater gave a sudden cackle. Sir, is it now? That's more like it, but tell the prince here to keep a civil tongue in his head. Prince Brat shot Jemmy a poisonous look. The garlicky outlaw was leaning closer to Jemmy. See here, Prince. It's not that we doubt your word and honesty, not a bit, but all the same, let's hear you read off that message. Jemmy turned away from the man's breath and began to read. No, no, lad. Let's have it from bottom to top. Read it backwards. I do hope for your whipping boy's sake you don't stumble and trip as if the real words ain't on the paper. Jemmy shrugged. It says, son obedient your obedient son, said Hold Your Nose. Keep at it. Jewels and gold, of cartful of a ransom, a demand they. They demand a ransom of a cart, a fool. The outlaw himself began to stumble and trip over the words. Aye, that's the ticket. Jemmy read the message through backward, and then a second time before the hairy outlaw sat satisfied. Now then, all we got to do is get the message to the king without getting nabbed in the act. Simple, declared Jemmy. Send it to the castle in the hands of my whipping boy. Chapter 10, in which Prince Brat lives up to his name. Hold Your Nose Billy clapped a leery eye on the rat catcher's son. Prince, do you take me for a precious fool? Send your whipping boy to blab out where we're hid, eh? The king will come chopping down every tree if he finds out we're nested in the forest. Jemmy assumed a princely air of indifference. Then tote the message yourself. It's no skin off my ear if you never get back alive. He filled his mouth with bread and herring. I declare, this is tasty. Prince Brat scoffed under his breath. He hadn't shown a moment's of interest in Jemmy's scheme to free him. Their eyes met and clashed. God, Jemmy thought, he's fuming like a stovepipe at being unprinced. He'll have me charged with treason. I'll stand guard over the prince, said Cutwater. You're the one to go, Billy. Me, hooted the big man. Me, that they sing songs about and pinch their noses? At the first whiff of garlic, it would be off with the head of Hold Your Nose Billy. Unlikely, corrected Jemmy. True. Papa would have you tortured a mite to loosen your tongue, but he wouldn't have your head. Not Papa. He favors slow boiling in oil. The effect of the outlaws was instant. Hold Your Nose Billy's jaw dropped. Sweat broke out across his face like raindrops. Cutwater, you're skin and bones. You could slip in and out of a keyhole. I'll guard the prince. Faugh, Billy, I don't fancy being boiled to a crisp. The hairy outlaw gave a second and loud and decisive snort. We'll send the whipping boy. Jemmy held back a sigh of relief, and my crown with him. Your golden crown, blurted out Cutwater. Not by half, we won't. Jemmy made the pretense of blazing up with impatience. Simpleton! I swear there are not two more ignorant, cloven-footed blockheads in the land. Prince Brat shot Jemmy a quick, thunder-scowled look. Stop it, he whispered harshly. Don't give them the rough side of your tongue. You'll get me whipped. Jemmy ignored them. Donkeys, he continued. Before the day is out, dozens of villains will deliver up false claims. Only my crown will convince Papa that you're the genuine villain. Hold Your Nose Billy began to pace, munching garlic cloves as if they were grapes. Finally, he tipped the crown off his head and flung it to Prince Brat. Whipping boy, deliver it to the king. If he doesn't follow our instructions to the letter, the prince will be done for, Cutwater snickered, drawing a knife-like finger across his throat. And blab all you want, added the other outlaw. We'll pack the prince off to a different hiding place. By its smelly tail, Prince Brat tossed aside the uneaten herring. Without showing the slightest concern for Jemmy's fate, he flicked a glance at the two outlaws. I'll deliver nothing, he exploded. I won't go back to that castle. Tune in tomorrow for Chapter 11, containing a great deal of shouting.